Hey everyone, welcome back to the Meme Team podcast, where we dissect the marketing strategies creating breakout cultural moments. This week, we're welcoming Marissa Kranis, VP of Brand Marketing at Webflow, after 12 years at Salesforce. Welcome, Marissa.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm stoked to be chatting with you.
Yeah, definitely. Excited to hear about this latest Webflow campaign, and talking about kind of the behind the scenes and how it all kind of like worked out.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it too.
Awesome. So let's get started with topic number one, which is Twitter's $1 million long form content prize.
Oh, are we saying Twitter? Are we saying Twitter? We're not.
We
Can we
say
call
Twitter
it?
in this house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we do Twix? I always like Twix just to
Really?
like really bring them together.
You can tell the brand marketer. Okay, so this week, Twitter announced a $1 million prize for the best long-form article posted on the platform. It's a dramatic incentive to push creators to start creating content on Twitter again, as most of us who spend a lot of time on there have seen just bounds of creators get off the platform. So it comes after, Twitter's kind of been continuing to hemorrhage advertisers. The UK revenues are down 58%.
Oof.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's trying to reposition itself as a serious content destination. Did you see this, Marissa? Do you
I
want to
saw
throw
this
your
and
hat in the ring?
I saw this. I have thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think a few of them that really come to mind is, first of all, Substack is literally the first thing that comes to mind for me.
Yeah.
Substack is having not just a moment, but I think a long-term success based on that
Yeah.
long-form content, and Twitter, Twix, X, whatever we're going to call it, really wants to grab at that. And I
Yeah.
think that personal opinion, I don't think it's the right
It's gonna
move
work, yeah.
for a few reasons. And I think we can chat about those. Yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of screamed desperation to me, where it's
Yes.
like they're kind of trying to figure out what it is they're doing and who they are, which is crazy because it's like, it's been this thing for so long. It's kind of like the short form content. It's where people go to like learn about trends, learn about news. It's kind of like the public square. And so to try to
Yes.
turn it into a long form content platform, which they've done, right? They've have announced, the newsletter tools and all that for like a while, but now to kind of go, I guess, $1 million, into it, it seems pretty wild because it's like, why long form, right? That's what I would love to like hear. It's like, why long form? You have Substack. Is Substack who you think you're competing against? Because
Yes.
Threads just announced that they hit 400 million users, right? And that's
Yeah.
kind of starting to take its, piece of the pie. And then you have obviously, Instagram and TikTok, all like video content, right? Like, I think it was just, this earlier this year, or sorry, not this year, right? Earlier last year,
Yeah.
they did the play into like video and like allowing people to like upload really long content, right? So I've seen a lot of podcast creators upload like the full video of their podcast and put it on there. So it's strange to me that they would go for long form written content instead of doing more video or like podcasting and going from there.
I think that they haven't found their space that's going to be working, because the real issue is that there's a cultural problem there.
Yeah.
Advertisers are leaving because of moderation, not because of the content length, not because of anything else. Like, we see this all the time with brands. Like, do we feel like our content showing up next to something that is not moderated, that could potentially be associated with our brand in a screenshot? That's scary. That's why I'm not advertising there. It's not because I don't have
the whole.
Yeah.
No, sorry. We saw that whole battle with Grok AI like 2 weeks ago.
It's ongoing.
Right? Where it's like, yeah, and it's like this is what people are afraid of, is showing up next to a photo of a woman that's now in a bikini because some troll asked for it, or even worse, to have a child show up in a way that they shouldn't, right? And so these are the things that companies are telling you that we want you to solve. And they kind of refuse to. I mean, firstly, because Elon doesn't want to fix it, right? So if it's coming from the top, then like nothing that's happening in between that, other people are trying to come up with, like, Nikita Bayer, like we see him, on Twitter, like talking about, what he's trying to fix and the content moderation and the trolls and all the like bots. But then when you have the head say that like, oh, I want my timeline to show up this way, right?
Yeah.
and that shifts the entire timeline for everybody, then, like, everyone's getting sick of, like, the timeline changing and not having it work the way that they're used to and the way that they'd kinda set it up, right? Like,
Yeah.
longtime Twitter users are used to setting up their Twitter and getting the type of content that they want. When that changes because the algorithm changes because of some, whim of, Elon Musk, then, like, let's try to look at, like, the real problem, right? And
Mhm.
that's kind of what I've been seeing. A lot of, people come and comment, like, I'm not here to be reading newsletters. I'm not here
No.
to be, um, to put up my own work. I've seen a lot of creators say that they're not really incentivized to put up their own work, on there. They prefer to be on Substack. I've seen a lot of friends just move completely
Mhm.
onto Substack and start
Yes.
using their timeline and their, like, posting system, which is funny because they launched that, a few years ago, and it's been kind of slow rolling, but as people have kind of become more used to posting their own content and getting people to comment back, like, really smart, intelligent conversations are happening on there, people are starting to move over, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, I think those are the things that they have to look at and not just try to incentivize people with $1,000,000.
Yeah, I think a cash grab is not gonna do it. I think it's a
Mhm.
cultural fix, not chasing the latest trend or the
Mhm.
latest success, and it's like, what is our actual our identity as a
Mhm.
platform? And I think that there is some research and people that they need to talk to. I mean, like, I look at myself and I'm like, only way that I use Twitter is I look at sports scores, I look for,
Mhm.
like, real-time commentary, and I'm not looking for to read, like, a whole article. I'm looking to
Mhm.
get the real-time news and what's
Mhm.
happening, like, immediately,
Mhm.
and multiple points of view, and, like, I'm also the advertising buyer, and, like, I
Right.
don't know who the conversation is being had with,
Mhm.
that says that this is the right direction and this is the identity that, Twitter should follow.
Mhm. I mean, Twitter's long been known as not having a good ad platform and, like, trying to figure out how to, like, buy ads, how to figure out how to find an audience that, like, works for you. Like, Facebook, Instagram have completely blown it out of the water. TikTok has also managed to do pretty well in terms of, like, audience, selection
Mhm.
and buying, probably because their algorithm is completely random and chaotic, and that's the point. That's what people know it as, and it's more based on, like, interests, less,
Mhm.
like, demographics and all that. But Twitter, like, I mean, I haven't tried to buy ads there, for a really long time, but I do
Yeah.
remember, when I
Yeah.
did try, it was just like a puzzle. Like, you just don't even know what you're looking at, how it works, or anything like that. So, it's not surprising to me that that hasn't changed. And then on top of that, you have all this, like, content moderation, stuff happening, which is still ongoing and not getting fixed. I mean, what seems to be happening actually is that countries are starting to step in and be like, we're going to set up regulation so that this can't be done anymore, which is what we're seeing in the UK and other European countries because they're
Yeah.
just like this shouldn't happen. And unfortunately, that doesn't look like a thing that's going to happen in America anytime soon.
No.
So we might still be stuck with the current timeline as it stands, but that's definitely a concern there. And I do agree with Marissa that, like, what I'm on there for is, like, hot takes of, like,
Mhm.
everything that's, like, happening, and just, like, pithy commentary, and that's something that they could definitely go into, which is what I was talking about earlier, right? Like, podcasts are the new medium that people are using to get their news, right? Like,
Mhm.
the fact that people are willing to listen to 3-4 hours of Joe Rogan talk to them, and, like, a guest, right? Shows that the willingness is there. Whether that translates to reading long form content is another problem, but I really think that they should leave that to the Substack and, like, I mean, LinkedIn, you can arguably
Yeah.
say has been growing their own
Their newsletters,
newsletter
yeah.
platform well enough to actually start maybe competing more with Substack. But I don't see Twitter kind of being in that space. And even when they moved from, like, 140 characters to 280 characters,
Oh, the
like,
life of me.
right?
Like
It was like people complaining, "Oh, no, now you have more, like, room to say what you have to say, but should you have
But
more
should you?
room, right?
That's a great question. That's a great question.
And like the whole point of like, Twitter was like, if you could get it down into bite size, that's what made you go viral, right? That's what made you, get followers and people, pay attention to you. And that's slowly kind of been changing where it's like no longer the things that go viral. I mean, this is another problem. It's just the algorithm has changed so much that it's no longer about having those hot takes and those like pithy thoughts. It's now just like, well, what goes viral on Facebook, right? Like it's filled with like AI slop and like, video slop of like, cooking videos and well, this is where I'm starting to get, people making like, arts and crafts videos or, AI slop. And yes, you could say that like the algorithm gets shaped by what you look at as an individual. But if the content is there and it's being pushed because it's going viral because other people are making it viral and it eventually makes its way into like your window, then you're more likely to see it. And the way that people react is not quick enough to make it go away quickly. So the algorithm just kind of changes and it has changed and become more, AI slop. So that's a lot of things like where I hear too, where it's like, how are you competing with the AI slop by making long form content, kind of come up. And what's even worse is the blogs that I have seen kind of come up are kind of like just, weak, you know, generalized kind of, content. One, I don't know if you saw this one, but the one
Mm.
that went viral about like the lessons to learn about life. If you want to change your life in a day, here's what to do. Which is funny because it went viral like the week before this competition was announced. But that's the one that like most people had said, oh, it should be this one. It should be this one, even if like the deadline was not met. If they would have put more of a baseline of saying like what we're looking for is more like in-depth like kooky quirky type content that like is written by experts to give you a rabbit hole to go down, I think it would have done better because it's like you're trying to invite the people that are best at their field to write the work and not just like where you're trying to get as many eyeballs as possible because that's what they're looking for is virality, right? So like you're kind of diverting to the mean. First off, the competition is dumb itself, but second, it was not done properly in order to try to get the type of commentary that they would want or I think they should want to create
Mhm.
Twitter into more of an intellectual like space speaking of that public square.
Yeah.
So it just kind of ends up being like nothing because people just don't know the identity of the brand.
From a brand perspective, I ran social and content for Salesforce for
Hmm.
many years, and the thing I loved most about Twitter was the conversation. It wasn't
Yeah.
long form; it was short form commentary and community management. How we could help people, how we could add value, and I think that that is something that they're kind of moving away from when they are saying long form content. They're
Hmm.
pushing that, and I miss that. I loved the community management aspect. I think that that
Hmm.
was one of the most, I think, fun parts of our job.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think like one of the most famous use cases of Twitter is like people hopping on there to complain and getting customer service to slide in,
Oh,
their
man, I've
DMs.
used let's not lie, we've all done it, we've all done it. Delta,
Totally.
United, especially,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, all the airlines.
Yeah, no, totally. And but the thing that happened and the thing that like mattered was that it changed. It made companies have to be like, shit, we need to get on Twitter and respond to people complaining because otherwise people see it. And then, the
Mhm.
narrative gets out of, control and like people start, glomming on saying like, oh yeah, I also had a personal experience that went awry,
You gotta own your own narrative, and that means sometimes, especially when comments are happening, you have to choose when you
Mhm.
speak and when you don't.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that last week with DoorDash, right? Where it's like
Mhm.
the whole desperation score, and like they knew they had to like jump on that immediately as soon as the conversation started happening on Twitter because they know that people pay attention to those things. And so that's the thing, right? It's still a public square, and I think that's what missed the mark here for me was that
Yeah.
this was not in line with them being the public square, at least not the way that the competition was set up or spoken about. So that's
Mhm.
a lesson to be learned for me is know what your platform is doing and what it's meant for, what people are using it for. Oftentimes what people are telling you that they want is exactly
Mhm.
what they want, so listen to
Yes.
them. It's crazy that like this is being done, like $1 million is being put towards this, instead of trying to get people to use it as a public square and like fix the algorithm and get it to be more like Twitter used to be, when it wasn't bleeding advertisers and it wasn't bleeding users,
Mhm.
and you had this like identity of being where people came to get their takes, to hear about news, to hear about sports. That would be a thing actually. Sports conversations are like
Mm.
very of the moment. How can
Yes.
you be bringing more of that onto the platform, because that's where people go to keep up with the scores, right?
They've done some pretty good stuff there. I actually like following their sports because they do have that curated and they do a good
Mhm,
job there.
mhm.
But, like, that's the kinda thing they need to lean into, not long form. Like,
Exactly,
I think my biggest
exactly.
lesson learned here is it's like the 2 that you said, it's know your brand identity,
Yeah,
know what you really can own, and don't follow, like, the here's what's doing well right now, like, really know what you're good at,
yeah,
and I think the other one is
yeah.
know your audience, listen to them, and if they say, "Hey, this is what we want," they probably want that. Like,
Yeah,
so, like, I
imagine that.
I think thing that is so fun for me at Webflow is that, like, I am the buyer. I am their
Mhm,
ideal customer.
yeah.
So, like, I get the head of the chief product officer being like, "Marissa, is this something you would care about in our
Mhm,
product?" And I'm like, "Yes." Like, I am the ideal buyer, and it's so fun to
mhm.
be that person for your own brand instead of waiting for X or Twitter to come ask me what I think.
Yeah, 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 no, definitely. I think that's the perfect segue into your
Yeah.
latest Webflow campaign.
Yeah. So our latest Webflow campaign is AI Guy, but really it's about owning your narrative.
Mhm,
This is a social first campaign, and we're really personifying AI answer engines. And we are specifically using Richie Moriardi, who is on CBS's Ghosts, and a bunch of other stuff, and who is really actually an improv like master. And how we're personifying AI is that it's an overconfident, flawed, and occasionally wrong. It's like that intern that like is just
mhm.
so confident. Like initially we were thinking like a cousin Greg from
Sure,
Succession. Like
Succession.
someone just like shows up and is like,
Mhm,
yeah, totally. I know everything. And it's like
mhm.
you're not questioning where they're getting the information and things along those lines. And we're seeing that in AI. I think personally, I've seen it so many times. Like I've asked, like, can you help me like understand the ending to this book? And I'm like, the hallucinations are crazy. Or even like, I don't know. I don't have that
Yeah,
information. And so
mhm,
by personifying that element, we are kind of like showing like the hook is that AI guy is struggling and where he's
mhm,
getting this like information around brands. It's hilarious in
mhm.
reality. And we a few of like the key touch points that really get me excited is the idea that some of his information is coming from like LLM jazz. Like he's just kind of making it up as he goes along. And I think that it helps you feel like you understand what's happening, even though it's like a human that's playing
Mhm,
ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude in the moment. So we the biggest thing for me also is I come from a social background and making sure everything was built for social first. And there, while we have the video ads out now, we are thinking long term how we build this out, how we build out a liminal world of of like personifying the issues that people have with tech,
mhm.
um, and how we as Webflow can help solve those problems.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me was how funny it is and how
Yeah.
much you're willing to play along with what people are already thinking about AI anyway, you know?
Yeah.
Like, let's be upfront about its flaws, about how it does
Yes.
hallucinate, how it doesn't know everything all the time, but how it pretends to, you know?
Yes.
Unless you then like push back and, ask it, actually, is this true? Like, where did you pull this from? Where did you get this context? And then they're like, oh, yes, you're right. I had to make that up,
Great.
right?
Great
But
job.
yeah,
You're
exactly.
the best.
Yeah, exactly.
M dash,
Yes,
M
the
dash.
exactly. The sycophancy is like another
Yeah.
thing where it's like, it's always gonna be agreeable. It's
Mhm.
rarely gonna push back. It makes you feel like you're brilliant. which some of us could, use a little less of.
I don't need to be told I'm awesome all the time.
Exactly. No, yeah, I need you to, like, be upfront with me,
Mm,
about, like, what works, what doesn't work, and I think this is becoming more and more, important, as we use AI more, right? Like, it's
yeah.
it's it's in my process, I use it, right? I use, the various ones, I go from Claude to ChatGPT depending on, like, which one is better at the time.
Mhm.
There is no loyalty to a particular chatbot, it's like you
Oh, I've got
choose.
loyalty. I
Oh,
hang out with
really?
I hang out with my buddy Claude all the time. Like, Claude's my
Now or,
boy,
like, has
like,
it always been Claude?
uh okay, I this is something when I think about, like, brand awareness and, like,
Yeah,
how you think about brand. I have been Claude from, like, the get-go. There was, like, an
interesting, yeah.
ethics element there where they're like, they're the ethical AI. I
Yeah,
don't even know if they say that anymore, but I got started when they were, like,
yeah,
really calling themselves out,
yeah,
Anthropic, as, like, the ethical AI,
yeah.
and I haven't, like again, I don't know if they market themselves as that anymore, but that stuck in my head. I
Mhm, mhm.
started using it. I love having conversations with it,
Mhm,
and, like,
mhm.
I do feel like it has learned how to talk what like me. It's learned
Mhm,
how to,
mhm, mhm.
like, really use my feedback. So, yeah, I'm a Claude fan, but Claude also, again, like, can't give me all the answers that I want a lot of the
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
time.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And
So we have talked about how they are positioning themselves to be, slightly different, whereas ChatGPT is more of a catch-all, like Google type. You have
mm,
Claude, Anthropic being more for like artists, like the people that are building, like, they set that store up and the pop-up in NYC where it's like, a thinking cap, right? And are kind of going for more of that type of, positioning for themselves. And you certainly see that in who uses them. I'm not surprised actually that like,
really?
I hear more marketers use Claude because, kind of that's where they kind of see themselves. But anyway, point
Yeah,
is that like Webflow has kind of done a really good job in like, personifying that and bringing that to the fore. And I like the honesty behind it because it's more of a like, hey, we get you. We totally
yeah,
understand what you as a user are going through because we also go through that with
yeah,
like the chats themselves.
mhm,
So it makes it more relatable to people. And
yeah,
I think that that's part of what is missing right now with a lot of like ads like and
mhm.
campaigns that are going on. We we've been talking about this where there's so much like rage baity content going on, where it's like I think there's gonna be a change in that, and so I'm happy to see, like, Webflow is actually falling into the, like, we're doing more, like, empathetic marketing of, like, what people are really thinking about, what they're going through, and not just trying to piss them off in order to, like, use us as, like, the default.
I do find that there is, like, maybe some rich, but a lot of the time what I see in B2B is people are like, "Here is exactly what our product does. Let
Mhm.
us give you," like, in any of their commercials, it's just so specific, and it doesn't hit on the actual pain point, and I
Yeah.
feel like if you're talking about the pain point, you're going to like, people are gonna feel that, they're gonna have empathy for that moment
Mhm.
versus us telling you, we can create the schema within our product that will get
Mhm.
you to show up on all of these platforms. Yes, that is included within the ad, but more so we're
Mhm, mhm.
showcasing what happens if you don't use Webflow.
Yeah.
Like, your brand is not going to show up. It may show
Mhm,
up, it
mhm.
may show up wrong. So I'm showcasing what happens if you don't use us. And
Mhm,
that
mhm.
pain point, I feel like captures people's heart a little bit more.
Mhm, mhm.
And like that's
Yeah,
what really
definitely.
excited me
Yeah, yeah,
about
yeah.
this perspective. I think the
Yeah, yeah,
other
yeah.
thing that really excited me is like the agency that we worked with is New Motion. Christina Garnett, I know that you've had on the
Mhm.
show.
Yeah.
She's their chief customer officer, and there's someone that I used regularly at Salesforce as well. And like they were like, they brought me some scripts and they said, like, they told me afterwards, they're like, "We thought you were just gonna, like, cross things out and be like, no, this all needs
Mhm.
to be, like, talking specifically about how our product works."
Mhm.
And I was like, "No, go further. Like,
Yeah.
let's, like, push this further. We are not trying to give people a product demo. We're trying to get
Right.
people's attention and get that point that they feel it." And they're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, that's what happened? Like, that's why that's happening. I
Mhm.
understand that. I'm there for it, and it's making me laugh." And I think we see that across the board with brands and, like,
Mhm.
especially I think we talk about it all the time with, like, influencers, creators, where it's like we
Mhm.
get a script and then we, like, cross everything out and
Mhm,
say, like,
mhm.
"Use our brief to the T." And it's
Yeah.
just the content and the conversation is not going to be authentic when you are not, like, letting the people that you work with kind of push.
Yeah, definitely. I think the other thing here to call out is that feeling of like what you're trying to create, right? I talked about this with Christina last time she was on, but I've been thinking about this more in the context of Monsters Inc., right? Where it's like we
Mhm.
had this whole idea that like
Oh, we're going to
scaring
movies. We're
people
going
and angry,
movies.
yeah, yeah, that like the lessons that we learn as kids like
Yeah.
matter to this day. Angering people gets you a certain amount of like energy, right? But like the moral of that story was that like they end up discovering that making people laugh got them more energy,
Yes.
right? And so like
Yeah.
seeing that like Webflow is like, no, let's make people laugh. Let's give people a good feeling, you know? I had also brought up the Chevy ad. It was more of a like tear laugh crying, you know, because like
Mhm.
that was like it gave me the feels like in a different
The
way. And I think that
feels.
that's what's more interesting to me
Mhm.
right now, where it's
Mhm.
like it's related to the product, but it's not a product demo, right? Like
No.
it's
We
not
can
just
give you
like
that. We can give you that, but,
exactly,
like,
right?
that's not what you wanna see in your feed.
Exactly. So I think, by being social first, you're
Mhm.
asking the question of like, what are people actually looking at? What are people actually wanting to have on their timeline? And it's not a product demo. I'll tell you that much, you know?
It's mostly cats for me, I'm just gonna be honest.
Exactly. Right. So cats, like,
Yeah, we're
we talked to
competing
some of,
with cats and babies, and so, like, if we are
yeah.
going to give you a 5-minute demo of our screen,
Hmm.
like, bye.
Yeah,
Like, people are gonna unfollow, they don't want you in your feed. I think
exactly.
I know you love movies, so this is
Hmm.
how I think about my ad campaigns, and
Hmm.
I recently won a Webby with New Motion at Salesforce for our work with
Nice.
Corporate Bro, and I can talk about that as well, but I'm
Yeah.
thinking about world building. Right
Hmm.
now, AI guy is living in a liminal space.
Hmm.
We There are more characters, there are more people within that liminal space that we can
Hmm.
create a whole world. So we are world building here. It is not just a single ad. It's like how do we build additional characters? How do we build out this world that we can advertise in that like can be holistic, that people can feel like they understand these different characters that all live in one land, so we can continue to build out like the same similar narrative and really own that narrative.
Yeah, I love that. I love, thinking about
We're the
that.
Marvel. We're Marvel. Just kidding.
Exactly.
One of the things that I thought Salesforce did so intelligently was they had this grouping of characters, Astro and Cody. Each one was associated with a different type of practitioner that was
Hmm.
using Salesforce. And these folks, these practitioners, this was their career. And they
Hmm.
identified with these characters so much. They felt each character had a backstory, each
Hmm.
character had a birthday, had a favorite movie. And again, like this was a bear with no pants on, but like people, all the developers were like, we are Cody. Like we have
Yeah.
those same values, those same things. We understand where Cody is. And that association with these characters allowed them to build out communities, to build out brand love in a way
Hmm.
that if you don't have like a specific association with part of the brand and like personify it
Hmm.
or characterize it, you're not gonna get. So, like, I loved that, and, the person that created that is just, like, Dom, she's incredible, and how she really thought through how she was associating these different characters with these different people that were working within the ecosystem, and, like, I hope that we can create characters that people can associate with too.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk a little bit more about that. How did you
Mm.
kind of land on the flawed AI versus the typical AI's amazing positioning?
Yeah, I will not gonna lie, I got a incremental budget, and what they were
Hmm.
like, "So, this needs to all be spent in Q4, and so we need a plan by 2 days from now."
Yeah.
And I had worked in the I think I was, like, maybe 3 weeks into the job.
Yeah.
And what we really did first was, like, we created a very, very in-depth brief, but beyond that, I have a trusted agency, New
Hmm.
Motion, that I've brought in, and I knew that we could do brainstorming with them, and I said, "Come back with, like, bigger ideas. I don't want a classic idea."
Hmm.
And the idea actually did start with Cousin Greg, and him being this characterization. Unfortunately, it did not work out with him, but we were really excited, with how it worked out with Richie, but,
Yeah. Awesome. And so how did you land on Richie after Cousin Greg? What was that casting like?
well, we were looking okay. sorry, Richie, but I really wanted someone with a punchable face. Like, literally everything they're, like, bringing me all these folks, and I was like, "Not punchable enough. Don't wanna
That's
punch
so
him."
funny.
And, Richie actually plays this character in Ghosts that has, like he, like, has, like, a arrow through his neck, and he did improv with with Caitlin at New Motion back in the day in Boston,
Yeah.
and she's like, "I know this guy. I know he could do it. Here's his photo, Marissa. How much do you wanna punch it?" And I was like, "No offense, Richie, but
Done.
super punchable." And it was great, and
That
he was
must make him
able to
so excited
he
that
doesn't
that's
know, like, even
oh,
when
how
we were
funny.
looking, like, sets, they're like, "Chair," I'm like, "Ooh, that looks like an office chair," like,
Yeah.
"Ugh." And so, like,
That's
yes,
so
maybe
funny.
it's not, like, a regular, like, thing to put out there, but, like, punchable was what I was going for.
Well, there you go. It succeeded. How do you guys measure success for this type of like meme first campaign?
Yeah, I think it's like again, we actually launched the campaign on my 4-month anniversary, so I'm 4 months in.
There you
So
go.
we're definitely doing some brand surveys. We're looking just how it compares to our previous CTV ads. Like I feel like
Hmm.
CTV is really where this is going to shine.
Hmm.
But also looking at like the measurement. Yes, brand measurement is an art and a science, and I actually lean more on the art of it. Definitely
Hmm.
commentary, qualitative feedback is huge. But what
Hmm.
I'm also looking at it is how do we extend it? I think that that's one of the biggest measurements for me is how much can we get out of this campaign? What are the
Hmm.
additional assets and like ways to activate it? And I think the more we can do that, that's part of my measurement.
Yeah, I like the idea of like how you're thinking about it as like a world and like a liminal space that you're building because otherwise, and a lot of companies do this, right? Where it's just kind of like the one and done, and then
Hmm.
use that as like the scoring and seeing how you measure it, right? But this way, it's like it's because it's an ongoing campaign. It's gonna be coming up, like, more and more, and people are gonna start to recognize, and then eventually it's a long-term play of, like, brand awareness that you've been
Yeah.
building, both for, new customers, but then also current customers as they start to relate more and more to, like, the characters themselves.
Yeah. And seeing how we're going to activate that at our customer events and like
Mhm.
kind of bring it into the wild, wild west.
Yeah, definitely. And then what pushback did you get internally for satirizing, AI while selling AI adjacent features?
I mean, I'm just gonna be honest with you. Our feature is like the biggest thing that we have a unique capability in is that we are set up within our Webflow tool to build out your schema for AEO. So we are
Mhm,
literally satirizing what happens when you don't use Webflow. So
mhm.
that wasn't a real pushback. We definitely had some areas where like I definitely got a question like, have you really heard them say that they couldn't find the brand before? I'm like, absolutely. I have experienced this. And so
Yeah,
there definitely was like a few questions like that.
yeah.
Uh, but I think, like, being new to a company and having like, I'm not gonna lie, my boss is, like, the best ever, and he trusts me, but I still,
Yeah.
like, brought him along,
Mhm,
um, and having those regular conversations with him, we moved really fast, but we didn't move too fast that we didn't have time for feedback,
mhm.
and
Yeah.
we made sure that we brought the right people to the table, so we had that feedback loop throughout.
Awesome. And then in terms of January timing, was that intentionally, counter programming?
Q4, let's go,
Yeah, right.
let's go. You know what? It really it was like there is like Q4. So people are building their budgets out for
Mhm,
for the next quarter. I know I
mhm,
am. And like
mhm,
let's get in their ears. Let's get in their ears. And I think one of the other things is that, I was at Salesforce for 12 years and I'm still building out, my brand team at Webflow and like we are pushing. And there's definitely going to be like hits and misses throughout that, but like I'm excited to move fast but intentionally. I wanted to
yeah,
be like, "Hey, I'm not gonna start just in like go do what you've already been doing. Like,
mhm.
I'm not just gonna continue this. I'm gonna try something new." I'm not gonna lie, Grace, who is my head of integrated marketing, she started a month after me. So like we're just running fast, getting things out and like intentionally getting things out, but like definitely moving fast and trying things.
I love that. Well, congrats on the campaign. It was a lot of
Thank
fun, and I
you.
love to see, companies moving in the direction of making things more fun and making people laugh,
Yeah.
and not just pissing people off.
Oof.
Awesome. So let's move on to my second topic, which is the Netflix "What's Next" tarot campaign.
I'm obsessed with
Um,
this.
Yeah, right. So they launched this tarot themed campaign to announce its 2026 slate featuring Teyana Taylor in a 4 minute film, basically. I would love to hear how she got involved with this, like, because, she's the super like hot it girl right now because of, one battle after another. But then also she's in
Rip.
The Rip,
The Rip.
yeah, their movie right now with Matt
Yeah.
Damon and Ben Affleck. Um, but what I really liked about this was that it's essentially showing 10 of their show worlds in the video. And I had, started talking about this last time that we talked about Netflix, because I saw that now that they're bringing in, podcasts, bringing them in house, that their next logical step would be creating their own podcast, which they did with the Pete Davidson show, which is coming up soon.
Yeah.
But then using their celebrities to promote their worlds. And that's kind of what
It's
we
the
saw
world.
here.
Let's
Yeah.
build some worlds.
Exactly. They've created some of the most like famous shows right now, Bridgerton, Avatar, all these like Netflix shows were featured in this commercial. And basically, the commercial kind of shows as a girl like goes into this tarot shop, and then Teyana Taylor kind of shows the tarot cards of like the different cards that relate to the shows. So the lovers is obviously Bridgerton. So she falls into the world of Bridgerton, and you have like a whole ball set up. And what was really smart about it to me was that they brought in the main, cast member that's going to be, whose story it is this next time. And so he's like dancing with, the girl. And then she falls into like the next world and the next world and going through like 10 of them. And in each one, they're showing off their cast members. So it's like they've made the whole like commercial with the actual people that play the characters in the show. And it's not just like, oh, here's like the Bridgerton world, like people dressed up and have like none of the cast members there, which we've seen before with
It
like,
felt
other
connected.
ads. Right.
Yeah.
It helps you get into it by being like, oh yes, that's the character that I know from the show.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I think like Netflix is gonna be start doing more and more is like using their cast members to be doing this type of like internal like promotional campaigns to show off their shows. So
Can I?
it went
Yeah.
viral. It hit 104 million owned social impressions, and it was
Dang.
Tudum's best ever traffic day. It went across 34 global markets, and then pivoted when the Stranger Things secret ninth episode conspiracy went viral, which ended up not being a thing. We talked about this with Christina, but they also capitalize on Teyana Taylor as she's like going through her like Golden Globe and like Oscar, campaigning. So bringing the attention to like the people that are actually in the culture at the time. And I think that's really smart because this is a thing that I advise companies all the time is like you have to look at what people are talking about in the zeitgeist at the time and try to bring it back
Yeah.
into like the things that you own, right? They know that like Teyana Taylor is going to be promoting The Rip. They know that she's going to be like hot because she's going on this like, the campaigning for like the Oscar, and then she won the Golden Globe, right? So it's like
Yeah.
people are paying attention to her and like want to see what she's doing. They made her look really like cool and like hot and sexy and everything for this
When does
show.
she
So
not?
that's
When does she not?
already right. So that's already bringing more people based on what she's putting out there. So I thought it was just like really clever. And then you're bringing it back to tarot, which is super popular right
Oh my
now,
God. I
particularly with
love it.
women, right? Right? So it's like you're bringing in all these like elements of things that people already like and associate positively and using it to promote your own brand, which shows that like Netflix is really thinking about what they can do to bring in more users, right? Like we just had Ted Sarandos out talking yesterday that like their competition right now is not TV, it's YouTube and it's Instagram. Instagram just launched, video
Mm.
features, video content. And so that's their play there, right? So Netflix knows that what they need to do is start competing more directly with YouTube and Instagram, which is a huge reason why I think they're doing the whole podcast, binge, where
Yeah.
it's like they're bringing in podcasts so that people have more like fluid, background content that they can have with the TV on, but not necessarily have to be paying that much attention. I think it was Matt Damon who came out and said that like Netflix movies are written differently because they know that people are not paying attention, So these are all things that they're thinking about and then using that to then market the worlds that they've built out. So you obviously saw the commercial. I get that you love Teyana Taylor. So what did you think about the ad and what they're building over there at
Okay,
Netflix?
so I think that what I loved is that it was a fully integrated campaign.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something you'll hear from me over and over again is that yes, there was this hero film, but there was also digital experience. I feel like
Mhm.
that was so great and like to have that actual digital hands-on experience. They had a pop-up in Grand
Mhm.
Central. And I mean, like for me, I also was like, I want those custom tarot cards that they actually
Mhm.
created for
Yeah.
all of this. And I think having those hands-on experiences and not just I think the hero film was great, totally great. But what actually excited me was the rest of it.
Yeah.
The rest of the places that people were touching. And I think that that's just done so well. And it
Mhm.
makes me think of a few different campaigns. I was talking to you a long time ago, actually, Without Remorse with Michael
Mhm.
B. Jordan, and how they had a multi touch campaign that included like drones delivering surprise packages to like great customers and like a philanthropy aspect. They're not just
Mhm.
thinking, what is this central thing? There's thinking, what is the larger ecosystem of content and touch points
Mhm.
that my brand can be part of that really can get people excited. So I love the multi-touch point. I love that there is like a hands-on experience. And I love that there's actually something you can touch. I want those tarot cards. How do I get
Mhm.
them?
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of willingness to buy merch from like, the community that loves you, right? Like we saw with Marty Supreme and Timothy Chalamet, those, sweatsuit jackets, right? Like the
Mhm.
whole outfit, like people wanted to show up to buy the jackets. Like they were asking for
Yeah.
that way in advance
Yeah.
of them actually doing the pop up. They sold within the first 15 minutes in New York, and similarly in LA, and everything was just kind of like rolling off of like Timothy Chalamet's vibes, yes, but then like the different touch points of like where people could get involved and like what they could do. And we're
And it
seeing the
was
success
rolling
of that.
thunder. It was just
Yeah.
rolling. It was
Exactly,
always
and
on.
yeah, and I mean, we saw the success, right? It's gonna be the most, successful A24 film that's gonna cross that $100 million, like, mark,
Wow.
which has never happened before. So, clearly it worked, and I think that that's definitely gonna change how all movies are being promoted, going forward. Obviously, you're gonna have to get the stars on board, but if they see that, like, hey, it actually works if you're putting in the work behind it of, like, being more involved and putting yourself out there, then the stars are obviously going to be, more willing to do that. And then the other thing that we've started seeing in terms of like merch is like how at movie theaters people are like buying those popcorn buckets, right? Or it's just like that's the thing that people want to participate in. So I think as long as you're kind of creating merch that people like or are enticed by, and that's different in a way that makes sense. Like we did talk about how the Stranger Things like Target collaboration kind of missed the mark because
Mhm.
you were just kind of selling the same things you would have sold
Mhm.
anyway, like t-shirts and like toys and
Yeah.
stuff, and it wasn't special enough to actually warrant it being like a collaboration. I think the tarot idea would be brilliant because it's
Yeah.
like you already know people would need to want to buy like tarot cards, and it's different enough that it doesn't exist. Like most companies aren't making like tarot cards, so it would be a completely new product for people. And the fact that it still relates to like the top shows of Netflix, which they're popular for a reason, mean that you have enough of like a fan base to be able to buy them.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So, lessons to be learned here are that it's time to start investing in premium content. Netflix already have like the worlds. We have the celebrities. Now let's start using them to create content that could only be made by Netflix.
Mhm.
So I fully predict that they're going to start having like the stars that are starring in like Netflix show come onto the podcast to like promote their shows, and building those like relationships so that like you have to go onto Netflix to watch these podcasts. And, people already are on the platform. So it like
Mhm.
gives them extra things to be able to watch. And then definitely see them like going eventually to like maybe, doing what Variety does with like the actors on actors or like directors on
Mhm.
directors. Like, what's this sort of like content that's going to bring people to watch it because like they're interested in it. And I think celebrities, the stars, directors are always going to like do that. I personally would be interested in like the authors, which would they have been like
I love that.
doing with like Emily Henry, right? Because like if you think about it, the authors usually don't get that, amount of like promotional
Mhm.
push behind them, which kind of sucks if you think about it, because they're the ones writing the material that like got so popular, right?
Yeah.
So would love to like have, a series of like the authors that get their books sold to Netflix, what that process is like, what it's like seeing your world come to life with like celebrities that also like behind the scenes content would be like
Mhm.
really cool of like all the shows. Like watching this ad made me realize that like I would love to kind of like get like a, behind the scenes of like these different films of like what it takes to like build the world out. Like show me how they made the costumes, show me how they make like the,
Mhm.
set, so yeah, curious to see like what, people are going to be doing, going forward. And then the second one is, how do you turn your fan theories into fuel, right? Like
Uh-huh.
people are already
I love
talking
that.
about these things online. They're talking about it on social media. We saw what happened with the Stranger Things, like, episode 9, social media campaign of like people having that conversation online. Well, how do you tap into that? How do you then respond to them in a way that like shows that not only are you listening to them, but you actively care for them to continue having these conversations about you and your shows online?
Mhm.
So yeah, any lessons for you from there?
I think the one thing is, like, just think about all the touch points. I
Yeah.
mean, I think, like, yes, a video is one thing, but, like, how do you expand it? And I think that
Mhm.
that's gonna be my forever lesson is, like,
Yeah.
don't stop at a video.
Mhm.
Like, that's the opener.
Mhm. Yeah, no, totally agree. I mean, we're seeing that a lot more. I think experiential marketing experiences are definitely going to become more of a
Mhm.
thing. Like we saw
Interaction.
exactly.
Yeah.
People you loved the K-pop Demon Hunters like theater experience where they got to meet
Mhm.
other people that love the show
Yeah,
or the movie,
community.
sorry.
It creates community, which is just, like,
Exactly.
definitely just, like, the next part of that. And I
Yeah.
think, like, from a B2B, like, implication, we have to think all the same things. This is a community, especially if we have a
Mhm.
platform that people are building on. How do we build that community? How do we bring the stars to the forefront? How
Mhm.
do we really, like, create a multi-touch brand experience for all of our campaigns? So I think that we, as a B2B, like, we should be able to look at things like this and be like, "This is something we can do." It's still people to
Mhm.
people. Everything we do is still people to people. So, like, this needs to be inspiration for how we go to market and how we treat our community.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with so many people just B2B is so boring, That's what I liked
What is it
about the
like?
Webflow
Brand
campaign.
to blah. No.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like, they prefer like D2C or,
Mhm. Yeah.
B2C because it's like you get
Shorter 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 sales cycles.
exactly. Definitely. Okay, awesome.
So the DoorDash is actually sitting out Super Bowl 60, and they've had, like, huge campaigns in the past. Their
Mhm.
last, ad campaign actually won, like, the big award at Cannes last year, like, $500,000
Wow.
prize.
Yeah.
Really incredible. So they're actually skipping the Super Bowl, and they're really gonna focus on social campaigns around the game. But their competitors, Uber Eats and Instacart are running spots. So just thinking about Super Bowl ads cost $7 million for 30 second. But they're saying this is a very strategic pivot. It's not because they don't have the money.
Mhm.
And so how I'm thinking about this is people are like, "Ooh, does a Super Bowl ad still work?" And that
Mhm.
debate is, I think, not the question anymore.
Mhm.
That's kind of how I'm pivoting this, and I've worked on a few Super Bowl, campaigns, and I think that there's a chance for both of them to be successful, and there's also a chance for both of them to fail, and I think what the
Mhm.
Super Bowl advertisement does, it's a door opener. It's really saying like, "Hey, we have this ad, and we know that, like, you are going to know it exists." Not to say that it's gonna go viral, not gonna say
Mhm.
anything else, but it opens the door to conversation. Those companies that are having Super Bowl ads, if they're leaving it at the ad, they're gonna lose. Because
Mhm.
the real thing is here, it's a door opener that is going to allow them to have that second screen conversation. We all know we just talked about it. Everyone is
Mhm.
on their phones. So how do you activate on your phones, on social media around that? And that's the only way to win. So what DoorDash is saying is like, we don't need that conversation starter. We don't need that door opening. We can just do it on social. And I'm really excited to see what they do because they have to crush it if they want to have
They
any
have to now.
conversation. On the other end of that, like like Uber Eats and Instacart, if they don't also crush their social campaign, their second screen experience, they're also losing. They're losing their they have no ROI,
Mhm.
on that ad. So I think that it's like, the question is not, do you do a Super Bowl ad or not? It's a, how well do you do the integrated strategy?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Honestly, I can't remember a DoorDash commercial.
Well,
Um,
it was with Nate Barga but I forget his
Bargatze.
last, yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
hilarious.
That's
And the
funny. Yeah.
year before, actually, they did actually a really incredible, um, campaign where they delivered all the products that were, advertised, during the Super Bowl. So they
Interesting.
showcased that they
Yeah.
could deliver anything. So they've been right on so far.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see how they're gonna break through and have without that conversation starter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so, while I don't remember the DoorDash ones, I do remember the Uber Eats one, and it's
Oof.
not necessarily because it played on the Super Bowl, but because of their social strategy afterwards, right? Of, like, what how it was getting around, what people were talking about, how it ended up in the press, right? It really shows your point that it's not
Yeah.
enough to just do the ad. Now you have to definitely make sure to do, like, the rest of it. I think it's easier, for Uber Eats, because it
Mhm.
has Uber, and like they've already kind of set up their social spaces like well enough to have like those communities already built up. We were talking
Yeah.
with Christina last time that like we just kind of want to see the Clydesdales again this year because it's like bring us back those like the nostalgia, the like happiness, the joy, and like those horse commercials just always do like really
I
well,
was The ad that really, like, always, I don't remember the ad of the
Hmm.
what I think is the best Super Bowl ad in the
Hmm.
last few years. I don't remember the ad. I remember the surround sound. I remember the ecosystem of content, and that was CeraVe with Michael Cera.
Yeah,
He
yeah, yeah,
started
yeah.
hinting beforehand. He, like,
Yeah.
started talking to influencers about it. He started,
Uh-huh.
like, I don't remember the actual ad, but I remember the whole experience
Yeah.
around it, the full integrated campaign,
Hmm.
how they were, like, teasing it. They were using Dumois to, like, tease, like, "Michael Cera's seen with a bottle of lotion. What's he doing?" And, like, things along those lines, and I think that, like, we all as brands are like, that is the ultimate because it was an extension. It was the
Hmm.
drum beat was as big as the ad. The drum beat
Hmm.
was bigger than the ad. We were all like, "Holy
Oh
shit,
yeah.
this is incredible." And, last year, actually, Instacart was working on this too. They also they took some of the playbook and they, like, were showcasing things, like, random things on Demois. Demois is,
Uh-huh.
like, the choice. Even this year, it's a partnership that I saw between Elf Cosmetics and, what's the water death what's it called? Liquid Death,
Oh, Liquid Death, yeah.
and they showed,
Mhm.
like, Nina Dobrov, or I can't say her last name,
Dobrev, yeah.
at a cafe with, like, the Liquid Death mascot, and we know now, like, I feel like this has been played out a little bit, but it's
Mm.
like, that was a spotting on Demois, and now you're
Mhm,
gonna
mhm,
see them in the ad together with that partnership, and so, I think that there's just, like, I think that CeraVe did it best. I think that actually,
mhm.
if I look back, there is some really positive things that Instacart did. I think now they're kind of doing the same playbook, but, like, thinking about, again, it's the surround sound, it's the ecosystem of
Mhm.
your marketing, it's not the single ad. If you're planning on the single ad making the splash, you're failing.
Yeah. Yeah, to add on to what you were saying there, I think, it's also not about just copying a playbook, you have to make it fit to, like, what
Mhm.
works for you, and usually the first brand to do something is always gonna get the most attention because 'cause they're the ones that, like, came up with the
Yeah.
concepts, came up with, like, the idea, so it isn't surprising to me that the CeraVe is the one that kinda, like, sticks out to you the most of, like, what they did in totality. But now that we have these other brands also doing like the same thing, and I'm sure actually that they're not the only ones. These are just the ones that have come across because either
Mhm.
the brands or
Yeah.
they had a
They
big
hit
enough star to
me.
get across. Exactly.
I don't know if Michael
Um,
Cera is, like, the biggest star, but, like, it was,
no,
like,
no, but it was
I
because he
found
was
it
first,
entertaining. Yeah.
right? It was because he was first. And then, also, I think that was also a lot because, he doesn't really do ads, right? So it was like the
Mm.
first time, like, what is
Now he
going on
does.
here, you know? Well, yeah, now he does, yeah. Probably has a kid now, you know?
Yeah, he's gotta make that money.
You don't wanna just copy the playbook. How are you making it work for you, right? I find best is like how can you steal from other like industries that are doing something that you wanna do, so that it doesn't look like you're taking it from like your own industry because most of the people still know that. So one of the best examples I think of this is we saw the Severance Grand Central Station like
Mhm.
experiential marketing campaign with like the employees in the glass box.
Yeah.
Then a few months later we saw Ramp do this with like the CFO in a box, right? So it's a
Yeah.
similar concept of like he's in the office, he's doing the work for the day. It's like right in the middle of like New York, and people were coming out to come like videotape it and see it. But the reason why it worked is because it hadn't been done in tech. Nobody had done like that similar concept.
Mhm.
So like it was brand new, and so you had that whimsy, and like that's why it's like I touch on that a lot. It's like what ideas can we be taking from like movies and like what's happening there
Yeah.
to like try to market that within like the tech industry, which also has a lot of money to play with, right? And that's one of the things that I found like super cool was that like instead of spending the 7 million for a Super Bowl ad, Ramp decided to spend however many amount. They actually haven't said how much it costs, but I would imagine it'd be a lot to like rent the space, rent the actor, set
Mhm.
up the whole thing. And then a
Definitely
similar
not a
play,
$7 million.
not 7 million, of course, but using that instead. And then they end up getting, buzz from that because it
Mhm.
was so different and new, right? And a similar thing happened with Stripe, where it's like, oh, how do we make it about us and like what we do, but integrate all these like other brands and make it have that whimsy and have that uniqueness, right? So they made it work for them. And so those are the things that like as companies I always advise, and why I like work on this podcast is like here are like all these lessons you could be learning of ideas that like people are doing. And I think DoorDash is the first one to say, hey, we're not doing the Super Bowl ad this time. They didn't have to say anything, right? They're using this as a marketing opportunity,
Yeah.
is to say, hey, this year we're opting out. We're just going to do this like social thing. It has nothing to do budget wise. Clearly we're
They're
doing
probably still
well.
spending money on influencers.
Exactly,
Let's be
right?
honest.
um
I give them all
but
my
like
money, so yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So like, we're opting out and we're doing this instead. And I think that was a really smart play because it's like they wouldn't have gotten as much attention if they had just not shown up and just done the social campaign itself, which they were going to do anyway. But now they've made the narrative of like, we're opting out of the Super Bowl. We don't think
This was
it's
a
as important.
strategic choice.
Exactly. It's a strategic choice. Now we have people waiting to see what they're going to do instead, right? Like, because
Yeah.
now I'll be paying attention. But they are going to have to hit the mark because if they don't hit the mark, like, then all of this would have been for naught, right?
And they are still gonna, I mean, hopefully, I hope that Instacart and Uber don't flub this, but, like, they're still gonna be competing
Yeah.
in the second screen with these companies, so any of them can fail, any of them can succeed, and I'm just, like,
Mhm.
really excited to see, like, how they think of the multi-platform.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Okay, so let's move on to takeaways. Twitter, basically, my huge takeaway there is to like know what your brand stands for and like what people use you for, right?
Mhm.
I think that was kind of like the miss here for me with this, $1 million cash prize for long form content. It's like, what are you going to do after this, right? Like,
Mhm.
if it's just kind of like one and done because people don't use the platform for this reason, then you're just going to have a bunch of like AI slop, blogs coming on because people just want to win the prize, but it's not going to do anything to actually change the platform in the
Right.
direction you want it to head to. So that's kind of like the miss for me. And then second of all, listen to your, the people, the actual people that you're trying to bring back, which is like the
Yeah.
users and the advertisers who are telling you that the content moderation and, getting, grok to like,
Mhm.
put inappropriate photographs on their timeline is not what they want because that's not what they want to be
Mhm.
next to.
You had my takeaways already. Sorry. I'm just kidding. I think my biggest takeaway for X is that know what your unique positioning is. Know your platform's identity. Don't try to force a pivot. It just is it's gonna fall flat.
Mhm.
My takeaway for this is that we really want to touch, like, when we are building a brand campaign, there's two things we want to do. We want to build an ongoing world that we can continue to advertise in. And the other thing is that we need to hit emotions. We need to know the pain points that people are working at. We're not doing a product demo. We are hitting your heartstrings and we are trying to make you really understand the value of the product.
Yeah. I really enjoyed satire and the humor behind this. I really think that more companies are going to get people to like their brands and like their products by making them laugh. And I think what you're saying is like, how do you build the world,
Yeah.
right? Like move beyond just like the
Single
one
tactics.
campaign
Yeah.
and then moving onward, which is also the takeaway for me for the Netflix one where it's
Yeah.
like use your worlds like Netflix happens to have all these like, brands that they've already, built up with like Bridgerton, Avatar, the worlds that they're already like building internally. But what are the worlds that you've already done, like that people already like relate to? Or do you already have communities that people like want to be a part of? And how do you bring that to them in order to get them to participate with you? And then the second one with Netflix is are creating that content for yourself, even if that means starting out with like, blogs and like written stuff and then like shifting over to like video where, we're kind of seeing like more growth. But then, there's a reason why podcasts are growing, why every VC is created a podcast and why, bigger brands are creating them, right? What other aspects to like your product and service can you talk about that are of interest to people that have, maybe don't relate directly to like the product, but do bring it back to like you and bringing, and building that community?
Yeah. I think my biggest ones for Netflix is similar, but I think it goes back to my through line, integrated. It's not
Mhm.
a single touch point. How can you touch people in multiple ways? How can you create a lasting experience that they have their tarot cards on their desk? And within that is bringing the community together, the in-person events, the people that are super passionate for those pop-ups. It's not thinking about the hero video as the be-all end-all. It's the how do we extend? Biggest takeaway for DoorDash is for me is that the Super Bowl ads are door openers and they are not destinations. I think that that's just like something that's like it's a starter, it's a conversation starter that you can then bring to the second screen, which is where people really are. And then integrated strategies, beat isolated tactics. I mean, this is my through line through everything that I've been talking about is having these multi touch points really uh, allows you to touch people where they are, express like have create community, create conversation. And then I think the other one is like DoorDash has to crush it. Like there's no room because their category is in there. Their competitors are very specifically showing up and they can't lose them. So they have to nail it.
Yeah. And the one that I'll say is use a decision like this, which could be, a really big thing to kind of get you more press, right? The fact that
Hmm.
DoorDash was smart about being like, hey, we're not going to compete in
Yeah.
like the Super Bowl, like Olympics this year, brought them more attention than they would have had
Yeah.
otherwise. So always be thinking about those like moments that kind of swerve
Hmm.
outside of what's expected and use that to bring you more attention, whether that's like talking to the press here or just kind of like having the CEO announce it on, Twitter. Like that's still kind of like the public space and people are going to pay attention, especially if the CEO is saying like, here's the decision we're making and why we're doing it. And it
Hmm.
sounds reasonable to people. People are like, oh yeah, that actually makes sense. And I won't be surprised if next year we see a bit more of drop off of other companies who are just like, you know what, we're also not going to do the Super Bowl or, rat race.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Marissa, for joining me. Please let everyone know how they can find you.
Yeah, I am mostly posting about cats and sports, but on Twitter and Instagram, at Marissa LK85, or
What
find me on
sports?
LinkedIn. Uh, I'm a big college and Bay Area basketball and football fan.
Nice.
Yeah,
And cool. So you can follow me at Sonia Bushes everywhere and the podcast at Meme Team Pod on YouTube and Meme Team Podcast on Spotify and TikTok. Thank you.
thank you.
Bye.